Open your Bibles to Romans chapter 5. I was going to start with this verse in our continuing study on the first chapter of Genesis, which for now will have about 2 or 3 messages. And then I'm going to leap forward all the way to the end. And then I'm going to come back and fill in everything in between. There's a reason for it, and when I do it, you understand why. But I was reading this verse this morning, struggling with this verse, because I wanted to get to somewhere tonight, which I'm not going to be able to do, because I need to point out something else first. I kind of mentioned it last time I was live. Verse 12 reads, "Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world," circle that word world, "and death by sin, and no death passed upon all men, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned." I want to focus on whereby as one man sinned, enter into this world. If I was going to take a quick survey on how people would define world, I'd probably get answers such as Earth, this planet, the inhabitants of this planet, but everything that pertains to this globe that we are on, called the planet Earth. Well, this is what I struggled with. I can't move forward in this teaching, especially on creation, unless we have a better understanding what this world means. The word world, at least, cosmos here. Go to John 3:16. John 3:16 reads, "For God so loved the world," same word there as Romans 5:12, cosmos, "that he gave," to give someone something, "his only begotten Son." For God so loved the cosmos that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Now, when we read this verse, we think it's just about us, mankind. Now, the primary focus is man. Don't get me wrong. But it's just not about us. Because how we understand the word world today compared to what they understood back when this was heard and then penned is a total different meaning. Listen, we barely could go 30 to 40 years, no more than 50 years, without words turning their meaning in our time. Take the word gay. what it meant something 50, 60 years ago means totally something different when people use it in speech now. Now, imagine 2,000 years, and these words, both cosmos and cosmio, goes back further than 2,000 years. Let's look at the word cosmos and cosmio. We have drifted far from its original meaning. And it does mean earth, inhabitants of these places, including the universe, as they understood it. I'm not arguing that, but it also means other things too. If you look at this word world, it puts a limit as we understand it today, or our understanding of it today puts a limit on what they knew back then. They knew so much more than we did. Not just a basic definition of what we know today that defines the word world. It has lost its rich meaning that the original audience who heard it being used, they clearly understood that it just didn't mean the word world as we understand it today, is what I'm trying to say. Whether you use cosmos or cosmio, one's a noun, one's a verb. The verb is cosmio. C-O-S-M-E-O or K-O-S-M-E-O. It was used as far back as 800 BC, which was known as the classical or the epic Greek, which dates it back all the way to the time of Homer. Now, like I said, Homer lived around the time of 800 BC, give or take a few years. Back then, all the way up to even when the Septuagint was put into Greek, it was understood as something much greater and larger than the world as we know it today. In fact, they use it, and what it simply meant really was order or endowment. Order, write that down, or endowment, because we're going to rewrite this verse using the correct, the epigenosis. Remember that Greek word way back in the starting years of this ministry? I used to use it a lot, epigenosis. It's a Greek word for precise and correct knowledge of God's word. It also carried a different meaning too. This is the cosmio. It was a technical military term used when describing the ordering of combatants or placing of a host. It's a military term, which means it would put in order, for example, the ranks of individuals in the military. That's cosmos. Now cosmos, C-O-M-O-S or K-O-S-M-O-S, that covers a wider range. It really is a big term. The Hebrew, when you study the Hebrew, has no word for universe, such as the Greek. It just used the term heaven and earth. That's all it used. But eventually, Hellenism influenced Jewish writers. And they start incorporating the word cosmos, and we'll get to a meaning of that in a minute, into the rabbinic material, the literature. And like I said already, including eventually the Septuagint, which is Greek in its conception. Now, Septuagint was done somewhere between the mid-3rd century BC, and it was finally concluded with another portion of the Septuagint around the 2nd century BC. Starting with the Septuagint, maybe a little earlier than that, the term of Koine Greek came into existence by the Septuagint's influence. Now, in early New Testament church, cosmos, the word cosmos, was understood as the cosmic order. You need to write that down. A cosmic order or system, or the universe, which also included heaven. Now, some say it became the most important term in Greek philosophy. And that's opinion, who knows? But it became an important word to understand correctly, not only in secular literature, but more importantly, in the scriptures, when we find these words used, in this case for the word world. If you look at John 3:16, its original audience knew and read it. You need to write this down. I have it written in my Bible, in my margins. For God so loved the order of His creation and the adornment. After the word adornment, you could put in parentheses the affection or the love that the creation provided Him. He sent His Son. I'm going to repeat it. For God so loved the order of His creation and the adornment, the affection, to love in parentheses, that the creation provided Him, He sent His Son. John 3:16, as I said earlier, is not just about us. Primarily, even though I say that, it is about us, but it's not just about us. What it does, it enlarges the role Jesus accomplished, so that His tasks involved the entire creation. The entire creation. The original audience would have heard that God's love extends to everything that He made that groaneth, as the scriptures declares, for that day to come when he reestablished what was lost. In other words, Jesus came to reorder the entire creation. The entire creation. God has not forgotten his original purpose for his creation. It was interrupted by sin. And it's had a 6,000 year delay from what God's original purposes was for Adam and Eve to accomplish for his purpose. He will recover that which was lost. That's why men and women are so important. That's why we are so important to him. We were supposed to have dominion over this cosmos. Under the Son, S-O-N, to rule and reign over his creation. And when Adam sinned, it disrupted everything in God's creation. You look in some of the ancient literature that's available. The reason why Satan and other angels rebelled, because they didn't want to be under Adam's rule, which was under Jesus Christ's rule. I can't prove that or disprove it. You can even see that in the book of Enoch. And the reason why I couldn't go any further without laying this down, because when we get past this first verses in the book of Genesis in chapter 1, we're going to leap 6,000 years and cover some end time events that brings back in the picture, when all is said and done, the possible purposes God had for Adam over, and I repeat, his entire creation in the cosmos. Well, what does that mean? Well, you got to hang in there. I'll get there. God has the last word, and he will return what he has started to its original order. So when you read this verse, for God so loved the world, read it with the understanding, for God so loved the order of his creation and the adornment, the affection, the love that creation provided him, he sent his only begotten Son. And we are a part of that reordering structure that's going to take place. The ones that survive this world that we are in now, using the modern definition of it, to rule and reign throughout eternity for a lot greater purpose than most people could even imagine. The Garden of Eden was just a starting point. There was a reason why he wanted Adam and Eve to procreate. I'll get to that. Whoever believeth in him should not perish. When the reordering of his creation happens, you don't want to be in the perishing group. You want to be the ones that didn't perish and have everlasting life. And what God intended for Adam and Eve to accomplish will be fulfilled. And he'll use you, and he'll use me, and every other believer and faithful participant that trusts in his redemption work, that gets us in front of that judgment seat of Christ, where he says, well done, good and faithful servant. Now to get there, it's all his work, what he provided for salvation. And never confuse the two. I think I've made that perfectly clear over and over. But the day is coming, a reckoning's coming, where he will sort out the goats. And he will move on according to his plan, his timeline. Imagine God's eternal timeline. You know, we could put on paper what the last 6,000 years looks like. Imagine doing it for eternity. I get amused by silly thoughts sometimes. But we're supposed to have dominion under the rulership of Jesus Christ. Adam and Eve interrupted that by the influence of Satan. But that's going to be restored, what he has lost. The second Adam has provided the way back for God to reorder his entire creation, and not what just we see in this planet. And he will accomplish and move forward from this really hiccup of time that we are now in. He loved us so much, and the order of his creation. You imagine the responsibility we're going to have under Christ's rule that he gives us for the rest of his creation? And some will have more than others. That will be based on eternal rewards. I'm convinced of it. And I'll get back to that series too. Not done with it. But those things are still yet ahead. Things that we look forward to. God's in control. He's never lost control. He knew what possibly could happen to Adam. He provided the provision to get us back to him. And it's not too late, my friends, if you haven't. And that only comes by and through his only begotten Son. You need to believe in him and what he did, and ye shall not perish also. There's amazing things in our future. The struggles that we experience now is just a blip in God's timeline. Now that you know this, now I can move forward in finishing, well, I'm going to finish in chapter 1 and leap forward 6,000 years where this will have a greater application and understanding. If you got that, I want to hear from you. I'm out of time. Play a song.